Man, these are some absolutely incredible finals we're witnessing here. We now have ourselves a tied-up 2-2 series, and let me tell you, the Thunder really had their backs against the wall for a significant portion of this game. Things were getting extremely dicey out there, with Oklahoma City finding themselves in a familiar yet uncomfortable position. We witnessed a backcourt violation that perfectly encapsulated how gassed and out of rhythm they looked during this stretch. The players appeared completely exhausted, both mentally and physically, as they tried to navigate Indiana's suffocating defensive schemes. Throughout the remainder of that fourth quarter, there were nearly as many entry passes to players like Myles Turner when he potentially had advantageous matchups, which was reminiscent of what we saw 2 games ago in this series. Though I use the term advantage somewhat lightly here, because honestly, there aren't many players you can consistently attack on this Oklahoma City defense. They read just that well-coached and talented defensively. Then there was this one particularly spectacular defensive sequence that perfectly exemplified OKC's defensive versatility and communication. After one of those switches led to Isaiah Hartenstein being matched up on Andrew Nembhard, something that Hartenstein had been beaten on earlier in the game with a crafty step back. Two-pointer J-Dub made an incredibly risky but perfectly timed hard help from the corner. This was a scary decision to make against a team as good at spacing as Indiana, but somebody else rotated perfectly to close out to that corner, demonstrating the Thunder's exceptional defensive chemistry and trust in one another. Then we had this series of plays where Obi Toppin was knocking down wide-open threes, benefiting from Alex Caruso helping off of him in defensive rotations. This highlighted the eternal gamble that OKC always makes in their defensive philosophy, the belief that they can guard enough of your three-point attempts effectively, even if they're going to concede some open looks in the process. You'd see plays developing with Tyrese Haliburton and Myles Turner running their two-man game, creating advantages that the Pacers were capitalizing on. The Thunder's defensive rotations, while generally excellent, were being tested by Indiana's ball movement and spacing. And for a significant portion of this quarter, they were failing those tests consistently. But through some brilliant defensive switching, and what essentially became a masterful two-man game between JDUB and SGA, they managed to find a way to get SGA's personal nightmare. Andrew Nembhard switched off of him. We started seeing a number of absolutely brilliant defensive plays where Chet Holmgren would switch on to Tyrese Haliburton and hold up remarkably well against one of the league's most dynamic guards. I'm specifically remembering that crucial airball 3 that Haliburton attempted. Though I should mention that Haliburton did manage to score on Chet during at least one switch where he got past him for a layup. It might have even been to such plays. However, there were numerous other defensive sequences where Chet switching completely cut off drives that other players like Aaron Nesmith could have had. There was this particular switch early in the fourth quarter where Indiana tried to get the ball into Obi Toppin, who appeared to have SGA matched up on him in what should have been a favorable post position. But SGA demonstrated his incredible basketball IQ by jumping the entry pass perfectly, leading to a crucial steal. That one defensive play seemed to have a psychological impact on the Pacers, as their offensive confidence appeared to waver slightly after that moment. This isn't the first raw deal for OKC either. They were down 2-1 against Denver in these same playoffs, facing a similar uphill battle. They had to mount a comeback from a substantial deficit in that series too. Showing this team's incredible resilience and championship DNA, the way they've responded to adversity throughout these playoffs has been nothing short of remarkable. And tonight was just another example of their mental toughness. When facing elimination scenarios, that third quarter was absolutely brutal for Oklahoma City, and you have to give tremendous credit to the Indiana Pacers' defensive execution. Through Andrew Nembhard's absolutely stellar defense on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the Pacers were dictating the tempo and forcing the Thunder into extremely uncomfortable offensive possessions. We were seeing possession after possession where OKC was making literally one pass, or sometimes no passes at all, as Indiana was applying relentless pressure right from the initial touch. You had Myles Turner lurking around that free throw line area, which was clearly making Shai hesitate and second-guess his usual aggressive drives. The Thunder kept trying these desperate attempts with very high screens or multiple screening actions on single possessions to free up either JDUB or SGA. But honestly, their entire offensive flow looked completely stagnant and disjointed. They simply weren't dealing well with any of the defensive pressure that Indiana was applying. It showed in their body language and execution throughout that crucial third period. The struggles for Oklahoma City's offense continued to mount as that third quarter progressed, and there were some genuinely concerning signs emerging. The fourth quarter brought about a completely different energy and execution from Oklahoma City, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. Following that crucial steal by SGA, it genuinely felt like that single defensive play might have rattled the Indiana Pacers' offensive rhythm and confidence. The defensive sequence continued to unfold beautifully for Oklahoma City as the possession reset to Tyrese Halliburton, who then tried to create something for his teammates. When Buddy Hield attempted to drive, he suddenly found himself surrounded by 3 different OKC defenders, all converging on him simultaneously and forcing a difficult missed shot. Or simply getting Aaron Nesmith matched up on Shai, instead of the more effective Nembhard Oklahoma City, was finding ways to create better offensive opportunities. They managed to force a crucial turnover out of him, disrupting the Pacers' offensive flow at a critical juncture. Luguentz Dort was able to stay attached to Tyrese Halliburton late in that fourth quarter, showcasing his elite perimeter defense by getting that game-changing steal where he simply deflected the ball from behind Halliburton, instead getting little off-ball screens so he could catch the basketball around the free throw line area. This positioning meant he didn't have to work quite as hard to get to his preferred spots on the floor when facing Andrew Nembhard's exceptional defense. Even with these adjustments, it remained an incredibly difficult game for Shai throughout. What's fascinating is that his statistical line doesn't completely tell the story of how challenging this game was for him. The 0 assists number probably stands out most, but he finished 12 for 24 from the field, shooting 50% on what felt like much more difficult attempts than usual. For the Indiana Pacers looking ahead to the next game and the future of this series, they have some interesting decisions to make. I think they could continue giving up the Nesmith switch because they trust that he's an awesome defender who can hold his own. While he didn't do quite as effective a job on SGA as Nembhard did, if Nesmith can simply avoid giving him a couple of fouls, they might be able to live with those results. The alternative approach would be doing everything possible to avoid giving up that switch. But that could result in more bodies having to move in rotations. Then they'd prefer potentially opening up opportunities for OKC to get better three-point looks. The Pacers have to be somewhat satisfied that the Thunder really struggled to generate quality threes throughout most of this game. This series is absolutely awesome, and Game 5 is going to be incredible with this 2-2-2 series tied up perfectly. This Oklahoma City team demonstrated once again that they can elevate to a completely different level defensively when the stakes are highest. The way they were able to completely swing the momentum of this game, while still having certain statistical indicators that tell us somewhat concerning story about their offensive execution, is truly remarkable. They finished with only 10 assists as a team, which typically would suggest poor ball movement and offensive flow. They shot an abysmal 18% from three-point range, though they only attempted 17 threes total. The game was characterized by an abundance of pull-up two-pointers, fadeaway jumpers, and floating shots. Not typically the most efficient offensive approach, but sometimes you have to win games in different ways. Nesmith, while still a capable defender, simply wasn't doing quite as effective a job on SGA as Nembhard had been doing, which allowed Shai to start drawing fouls and getting to his preferred spots on the floor, helping to keep the Thunder competitive during the early stages when their double-big lineup to open the game was struggling significantly. The spacing issues with how much OKC spreads the floor meant that when Indiana put Isaiah Hartenstein in various screening actions, the Thunder defenders had to cover much more ground than they would prefer. You'd see situations where Hartenstein was forced to close out hard on perimeter shooters like Nesmith, creating mismatches and uncomfortable defensive rotations. But eventually, things began to settle down for Oklahoma City as they found their defensive rhythm and communication. For 3 full quarters, the Indiana Pacers were genuinely the better team, controlling pace, executing their offensive sets, and getting quality looks. Then the Thunder essentially said, "We're not going back home down 3-1, and completely transformed their energy and execution. As the game progressed, and we got deeper into that crucial fourth quarter, the big story for me became watching Oklahoma City's offense gradually figure out solutions to Indiana's defensive pressure and schemes. There was this one particular sequence where SGA's off-arm was working overtime to create separation. But he managed to get enough daylight for a beautiful fadeaway two-pointer that showcased his incredible shot-making ability beyond the backcourt excellence. You had Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein absolutely going wild on the offensive glass, grabbing crucial second-chance opportunities that extended possessions and demoralized the Indiana defense. Alex Caruso had what felt like the most impactful 20 points. I can remember in a basketball game, every single bucket felt monumentally important to the Thunder's comeback effort. His veteran presence and clutch shot-making were absolutely essential to OKC's fourth-quarter surge and eventual victory in this must-win game. This was unjust about switching defense. Well, that was certainly a crucial component. But I do believe there was some strategic switching in that. Fourth quarter that effectively slowed down Indiana's initial drive-and-kick actions that had been so successful. The Pacers had been getting a bunch of quality three-point attempts, particularly during that dominant third quarter, where they were executing their offensive game plan to perfection. On the other end of the floor, we witnessed what felt like a significant amount of SGA and JDU bitumen game action late in this contest. The primary objective was clearly to get Andrew Nembhard switched off of SGA, because the defensive job that Nembhard had been doing throughout the majority of this game on Shai was honestly some truly special, elite-level stuff. Even though SGA was still managing to make some difficult shots over Nembhard's outstanding defense, you could see the impact it was having on his usual offensive rhythm and efficiency. Whether it was JDU driving aggressively and drawing help defense that created a clean three-point look for SGA, there was also this beautiful double team that Kenrich Williams and Alex Caruso executed on Miles Turner, which came during one of those moments where I felt like Turner was being featured more prominently in Indiana's fourth quarter offense. There was also this crucial run at the beginning of the game where J-Dub kept attacking relentlessly in straight line. Drives against defenders like Benedict Mathurin or Aaron Nesmith. Some of the offensive improvement was certainly related to defensive adjustments. But you also started seeing more plays where SGA wasn't bringing the ball up the court.